In spite of the diminutive size of their homeland, the Irish played an important role in the commercial and industrial revolutions that transformed the North Atlantic world. However, the role was ambiguous, turbulent, even tragic, for the Irish made no easy accommodation to changing conditions that buffeted them both at home and in North America. Historian Kirby A. Miller. The impact of the Irish on American history is almost unprecedented. More than any other immigrant group, the Irish helped build the nation from a newborn republic across the Atlantic into the political superpower of the world today. But the path to America was violent, full of hardship and loss. The Irish were present in the days of colonial America. Half were Scotch Irish Protestants. The others were mainly Catholic men who arrived as indentured servants. But immigration comes with prejudice. For most of the millennium, the Irish were British territory, first acquired during the Norman invasions of 1169. The Irish were considered backwater barbarians, uncivilized, ignorant to Christendom. As Gerald of Wales would write in 1188, the Irish are a rude people, subsisting on the produce of their cattle only, and living themselves like beasts. A people that has not yet departed from the primitive habits of pastoral life. Ironically, even when the Irish did become Christian, predominantly Catholic, the turmoil brought forth by Martin Luther's rejection of the Church in the 16th century rippled across Europe and reached the British Isles. The now Protestant English were determined to convert the Irish Catholics. They failed, and the cycle of hatred and discrimination against the Irish continued even in their exodus to North America. The small numbers of Irish in the Americas exploded during and after the infamous Irish potato famine between 1845 to 1849. British policy contributed to a horrendous disaster. Most of Ireland's exports, which were all agricultural, were designated to arrive in Britain, leaving few crops that the Irish could actually keep. The one crop that the Irish did keep, however, would be the potato, brought over from the Columbian Exchange. Nutritious and easy to grow in the rough Irish soil, it became a staple, especially among the poor. However, as all the other crops were sent back to Britain, the Irish grew over-reliant on the potato. This is worsened by the fact that only one or two variants of potato were used, creating a lack of genetic diversity that could have prevented a complete famine. A water mold, Phytophthora infestans, struck Europe in the mid-19th century. The worst hit will be Ireland, causing the famine to peak in 1847. Before the famine, Ireland had a population of more than 8 million. In the aftermath, 1 million Irish were dead, and another 2 million would flee from their homeland. Even today, the population of Ireland still hasn't recovered. British relief came too late. At first, many British lawmakers dismissed the famine. And then, as evidence piled up, partisan divides delayed aid, British policies didn't send enough aid, the British press villainized the Irish, and down the chain of bureaucracy and human error, relief for the famine would come too late. Ireland was now an island of the dead. British neglect had killed millions. But those who escaped the famine would land mainly in North America. The United States, a nation whose heritage is based in Protestantism, was seeing an influx of Irish, who composed nearly half of all immigrants during the 1840s. Irish families were often separated, arriving poor and having to sell many of their valuables to get around, moving into America's industrial cities in hopes for work. Unlike other immigrants, Irish women were more often than not had to come alone instead of with their families. Anti-Irish sentiment, carried on by the descendants of the colonists, as well as by nativist movements and Protestant Americans, led to prejudices of all forms for the Irish. The Irish were considered idiots, impoverished drunks, and compared to other immigrants such as the Germans or Italians, were looked down upon as subhuman, insane, sinful, and woefully un-American. It would be so bad that the Irish were looked down upon as much as a white man would do with a black man, which, ironically, led to sympathy between the Irish and African Americans. Despite the hardships, the Irish persevered. With little valuables and the will of an iron bowl, the Irish settled into America's cities with hopes and high aspirations. They quickly became the backbone of society, the bearers of American industry, taking up such jobs such as building railroads, stockyards, mills, and even canals. In 1848, the Irish would help finish the Illinois and Michigan Canal, demonstrating a trend where they helped cities like Chicago expand and grow into economic and political powerhouses. When they fought in the thousands for the Union during the Civil War, views of the Irish slowly changed. As the Irish American population grew, the Irish began to take up jobs such as policemen, firefighters, and teachers. And along with the work of Irish and Catholic leaders, views of the Irish began to change into one more in tune with a hard-working American. And while Irish immigration grounded to a halt as the U.S. heavily restricted immigration during the 1920s, the numbers of Irish in America had grown to a sizable force. The Irish gained political importance and heavy influence, their numbers and political maneuvering allowing them to decide elections on the local, state, and federal levels. They gained power as the leaders of labor unions and helped build America into a force to be reckoned with. In Chicago, 12 out of the 42 mayors were Irish. The two daily mayors, Irish as could be, became the most dominant and longest tenures in Chicago's political history. With their lives and communities centered around the Catholic Church, the Irish were heavily involved with the city's development, building parishes and schools, financing numerous educational and medical institutions, advocated for civil rights, and helped expand Chicago's borders. In fact, both Loyola and DePaul University have their roots in Irish American developments of Irish parishes. The Irish would also lead the way in helping diversity ease in as other European ethnic groups moved into the city, and their outspoken leaders were crucial in support for labor unions across the city. And in other cities, the Irish dominated every aspect of life. In Boston, where after decades of class, religious, and ethnic conflict between Anglo-Protestants and incoming Irish Catholics, the Irish began to control Boston politics as their numbers grew. They overturned the city's once Puritan stronghold, becoming the largest ethnic group in Boston, and eventually took over the city as a whole, both politically and culturally, establishing themselves as the city's political and business leaders. Southie, or the southern regions of Boston across the Charles River, where the Irish had originally moved into, is one of many symbols of Irish America. As the Irish moved into the political elite and became powerful leaders, they kept their underdog mentality, their resilience and resourcefulness giving them one of the most distinct ethnic cultures in America. One such Irishman, raised on the outskirts of Boston, would rise into the highest echelons of the country. In 1960, the senator from Massachusetts, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, became the 35th president of the United States, the only Catholic to ever do so. Today, nearly 35 million Americans identify themselves as Irish. Faced with unprecedented hardships from the very beginning, the Irish persevered against all odds, breaking the barriers of prejudice and discrimination. What were once a hated people, a group seen as alien, sinful, and dangerous, gradually grew into one of the most prominent and influential immigrant groups in American history. They helped build America into what it is today, and the contributions that the Irish have made to this country, what they had sacrificed for America, is almost unprecedented. One should not forget the hardships the Irish faced to get to where they are today, as not only is it a story that should be taught to other immigrants, but to present-day Americans and future generations. Irish America is American history. They are, and always will be, the greatest underdog story in the history of the United States of America.
Oh, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.